much as possible without looking at anything, just so that you understand the saransh of what I am trying to say. So this is one track called as the Hindu track. Then comes the Muslim track. Now, why is this important? I have demonstrated through the second book the gradual Arabization in multiple waves of the Indian Muslim identity with time, including the Wahhabi movement, which I have specifically said had its origins in a Delhi seminary. Why is this important? Until the process of Arabization is complete, or it is still work in progress, Indian Muslims continue to follow what law? With respect to succession, marriage, so on and so forth. That is the so-called period when this mythical creature called Indian Islam existed, because Muslims who were new converts or neo-converts of barely 1 or 2 generations were still living in the cultural setup of their ancestors. And therefore, Dr. Ambedkar points out during the course of the discussion on the Sharia Act and Constituent Assembly and other places, the Maplas of North Malabar were following Hindu law. Kohat and Northwestern Frontier Province, which was 97% or maybe 92% Muslim, was following Hindu law. There was no imposition. That's because that is the law they had inherited from their ancestors, period, nothing else. So that law continues. Now, the two-nation theory picks political traction post the Khilafat movement, and the seeds for it were, according to me, sown at least 100 years before that, even before Syed Ahmad Khan, who was a product of the very same Delhi seminary, where the two-nation theory actually had its origin. Now, what does this mean? If you need to unite people for the purposes of securing a separate state, you need to be able to give them a common basis. Now, the problem is, religion alone was not common or was not sufficient as a common basis, because religion and culture were fighting with each other. The Hindu ancestry and the Hindu culture of the convert Muslim and his contemporary religion or his present religion were at loggerheads with each other. So therefore, what did they have to do? The only way to create a pan-Muslim identity across the country so that this two-nation theory and specifically the Muslim League gets greater traction is by severing the relationship between the cultural past and the religious present. And to do so, you have to Shariatize Indian cultural values. Now, the British man obviously did not have any incentive in fostering unity in this country. Why would he? He was doing what we would have done in his position. Period. Are you telling me the Chanakya Niti is any different when you're actually trying to rule an enemy or any other society? It's not. Of course it is. So I am not going to look at it from the perspective of, I am just being clinical about this. He did this because he had a specific objective. Now, therefore, there is a very clear, I don't think the AC is functioning well enough. I think the audience is perspiring, or am I boring them to death? So the point is, he also furthers the gradual movement towards greater Arabization for multiple reasons, because there is also a strong pro-Khilafat sentiment starting from the 1990s. In fact, it's not 1919s. In the book, I established that at least from 1890s, there was active communication between the Turkish Sultan and Delhi seminaries, establishing kinship between the two. Now, therefore, here is a homegrown need to establish a separate Shariatized Muslim identity in the interest of giving Muslim League a political strength and create for it a pan-India base, a pan-India Muslim base. And you've had the Hindu movement separately. The British man then finally realizes, why don't I codify Muslim law? Until then, British Indian courts were applying Hindu customs and principles to resolve intra-Muslim disputes without any objection from members of the community. Without any objection from members of the community. Nobody revolted. Nobody took out any banners. No effigies were burnt. No stones were pelted. Okay? This is less than 100 years ago. Because the Sharia Act was passed only in 1937. Now, when that legislation is passed, British Indian courts, what would a court do when a new legislation is passed, where it disavows custom and brings in a new codified law? Every custom which violates that law is out of the window. So, British Indian Muslim jurisprudence starts changing from then on, because British Indian courts are now applying principles of the Shariat as opposed to principles of Hindu law, which were previously applicable to even Muslims, without imposition. Now, these are the two tracks. So, until 1937, this has been established. Now, what happens is, by the time you come to the 1940s, all our English-trained, British-trained Indian leaders who were trained in the same mold as the European master, as the colonizer, started approaching Hindu law from the very same lens as the master. And therefore, the zeal of reform. The word used was Hindu law or Hindu customs in the Hindu society represented a slum which needed clearance. Language used by some framers of the constitution. See, this is that gutter that needs to be cleared. Look at this, it's so cluttered. It's like this fuzzy brain. So many wires are entangled. I need to unravel it. So the project of codification that was started by the British man in the name of Anglo-Shastric law is taken further by their Indian successors. Now, whether you want to call them Indian freedom fighters or not, I leave the discussion to you entirely. Because these were the principles under which they operated. So when they take it forward, a specific committee is formulated called the Rao Committee. And what does it do? It goes across the country, seeking opinions from people. They come back saying, Arey Baba, we are actually meeting with a lot of resistance here. Because people are also saying, why do you want to codify something that is capable of running on its own? Why do you want to fixate something? Or rather, why do you want to fix something in time and cast it in stone? C-A-S-T, not C-A-S-T-E. Okay? So how do we deal with the situation? So they realize that there is extensive resistance